Good afternoon, sir. I'm David Fina from MDM, Master of Management, Development Management. I'm a beginner in economy, so
I'm always nervous when people begin with that statement.
So I should apologize first before I go through. But I'm fascinating with the history, and I've been reading the history of where I come from, Indonesia, especially the eastern part of Indonesia, where I come from.
Timor?
Yes,
Yep.
I'm from Timor. And as I read our history, I noticed that from the 15th century up to the middle of 1850, before the abolitions of slavery by the Dutch government, there is a lot of materials in my reading telling me that there are some movements of cheap laborers along the trade from East Nusa Tenggara, and actually a lot many more that is moving along the trade line in Southeast Asia into Europe, South Africa, and so on. So I just wonder whether, do you know any figures to determine how many of these cheap laborers contribute to the trading booms that you mentioned from 1400 to 1820, before the decline of the colonialisms in Southeast Asia. And I'm also interested in your statement yesterday, when the day before yesterday, you saying that history is only relevant when it has impact on the contemporary life. Right. So relating to this slave, I would say that because of this movement of trade during this 1500 up to the 700, this society in Eastern Nusa Tenggara, which is at that time very egalitarian, then beginning to form structures that includes slaves. Before then, I would argue that there is no such things. Only when slave becoming a commodity, a global commodity, then it becomes structures in our society. So in that sense, I would say that, and it's still actually, if you go to Eastern Indonesia, you can still see it everywhere in our language and in our almost every aspects of our society. You can still see it there. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, in terms of the trade boom, the world trade boom during those 3 centuries, it of course doesn't include the movement of slaves. If you're going to treat slaves as commodities, maybe we should. It's a little disgusting, but maybe we should treat them as commodities. If you did, it would increase still further the size of the trade boom, I think. Because we have very good data on valuing slaves, and so it'd be easy to just add them on. Never thought about doing that. It's also true that we know that the movement of slaves, at least from Africa to the Caribbean and to the southern part of the U.S., played a big role in integrating labor markets between the two. We know that the price of slaves quoted in those horrible export regions in West Africa to the Americas, the price differential on slaves just dropped dramatically across the late 17th and 18th century. Again, they packed more into the slave ships. The slave ships are more efficient, whatever. So it worked the way markets are supposed to work, as it turns out. I know less about Southeast Asia, or generally about Asia. We know that slavery was common, but whether they were cheap is less clear. what evidence we have on living standards, the heights of individuals and so on that are long since been buried, suggests that Southeast Asia had a higher standard of living than did Japan for a long, long time, well into the 19th century. So, Southeast Asians were not cheap labor at all. They were relatively expensive. But so what? As long as you have good military technology, you can still get them and export them to another place, and they do.